Let's be honest, most marriages depicted on television aren't anything we'd want to emulate in real life. The Simpsons is an amazing show, but Homer Simpson is the perfect example of the inconsiderate husband. He may be funny, but could you imagine being married to him? We'll let you know why we think Marge Simpson should cut her losses and move on. But before we get into the ever-cheerful topic of marital strife and how Marge should get the hell out of hers, subscribe to CBR and ring that bell to join our notification squad so you never miss any of our Simpsons videos. Codependence Day. Now it's easy to see Homer Simpson and point out all of his flaws, and it's fun too. But we aren't going to pretend that his wife Marge is perfect. She has her own undesirable character traits, and one of them is a predisposition towards addiction. When the Mr. Burns Casino opened during Season 5, Marge became almost immediately hooked on gambling. During the Season 15 episode aptly named Codependence Day, we saw Homer not only encouraging Marge's vice, but taking advantage of her in a major way. Homer himself has an alcohol problem, and it's telling that he has so many other bad qualities, we're just going to gloss over the fact. When Marge starts drinking, Homer's only too happy to encourage this bad habit. It all culminates in him drinking and driving, causing a massive crash. This would be enough to make any people leave, but it gets worse. Homer frames Marge for the accident, leading to her arrest. After getting his wife arrested, he can't even handle taking care of the kids while she's in rehab, instead leaving them in the care of Ned Flanders. At the rehab facility, Marge decides she likes being with Homer better than she likes drinking and forgives him. Should she really have forgiven him for endangering lives by drunk driving and pitting the crime on her? The other wife. We know that The Simpsons is a cartoon, and because of this, its characters are often able to escape the ramifications of their actions. But not all the time, as Homer Simpson once found out the hard way. In the episode Viva Ned Flanders, Homer decides to take the straight-laced neighbor/enemy on an epic trip to Las Vegas. The two have their own milder version of the hangover and end up getting hitched to two women named Amber and Ginger. Even if you're a pretty laid-back spouse, you'd probably agree that marrying someone else is a deal breaker. Instead of dealing with the situation, or at least coming clean to Marge, Homer tucks his tail between his legs and runs home. Later, during Brawl in the Family, the other wife, Amber Simpson, shows up in Springfield, much to Homer's dismay. Needless to say, Marge is absolutely devastated. Sure, it's implied that Homer never actually consummated his marriage with Amber or anything, but he did vow to love, honor, and cherish another woman for the rest of his life. Instead of facing up to his problems and repenting for hurting both Marge and Amber, he tricks the latter into getting drunk and marrying his elderly father. We guess Homer wasn't kidding when he says alcohol is the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. Safety. Firearms can be a topic of controversy. Duh. But whether you're for or against gun control, we can at least all agree that proper gun safety is important. We can also agree that someone as irresponsible as Homer Simpson has no right owning a firearm. During the two-part episode Who Shot Mr. Burns, we learned about the consequences of an improperly wielded firearm, but this wasn't enough to dissuade Homer, who bought his own gun during the episode The Cartridge Family. He's clearly unable to manage it properly, frequently shooting holes in the house and even using the gun to open his beer. This would be bad enough if he lived alone, but he lives with a wife and 3 young children. It gets so bad that even Marge is driven to the breaking point. She acknowledges that she's put up with a lot during her marriage to Homer, and flat out tells him she fears for her life and the lives of her children. She beseeches him to get rid of the gun if he cares about his family at all, considering that most of his actions just get a stern look and a disappointing grumble. This is pretty intense. In the end, Homer still can't get rid of the gun and instead begs his wife to clean up his mess for him, as usual. Health. Traditional wedding vows usually include a line about loving one another in sickness and in health. We know this isn't something to be taken lightly, but although it's not explicitly stated, we think it's important both parties in a marriage try to maintain their health. Sure, unexpected things happen from time to time, but Homer couldn't live a more slovenly, dangerous lifestyle if he tried. Marge manages to stay in great shape despite having 3 children, and essentially a 4th if you count Homer. But Homer does nothing but drink beer and gorge himself on food, and unless you're Dr. Nick, hi everybody, you probably know that's not good for you. Things get even worse in the episode King Size Homer, when Homer decides it would be a great idea to become morbidly obese. Not only does he do this without even considering his health or his family, he does so because he wants to get on disability and not have to work anymore. Marge even warns him that even outside of health concerns, this could impact her attraction to him. That would be enough for a wake-up call for most husbands, but not Homer. He proceeds to gain weight, wear a muumuu, and almost cause a nuclear meltdown. So pretty much the worst-case scenario when it comes to putting on a few pounds. Punishment. There are so many troublesome aspects of Homer Simpson's relationship with his family, it's impossible to include all of them. It's kind of sad that him strangling his son Bart has become commonplace, but it's become such an integral part of the show that we've just accepted it as the reality of the world the Simpsons live in. However, it's far from the only time Homer has inflicted violence upon his family. During A Tale of Two Springfields, Homer has to be talked out of blowing up a doghouse with dynamite in order to get rid of a badger. When he discovers his beloved town of Springfield has 2 area codes, he quickly incites a war between New Springfield and Old Springfield. Later on, we see him throwing a beer can at Mayor Quimby and trying to harm people of New Springfield by cutting off their power and their water supply. At the end, he tries to pin the blame for all the atrocities he committed over the course of the episode on Marge. When she disagrees, he simply covers her mouth and nose with a rag soaked in chloroform. Well, that's one horrifying way to win an argument. Poor Marge falls unconscious and apparently just forgives her husband for drugging her until she lost consciousness. Mob ties. The Springfield mob is generally treated as a source of humor on The Simpsons, but the implications are pretty upsetting. We've even seen one of their members, Johnny Tightlips, I ain't saying nothing, get critically injured during a shootout, although he wasn't eager to talk about it, of course. In general, it's a good idea to stay far away from organized crime if you value your safety. Here at CBR, we also recommend staying away from disorganized crime, just to be safe. During The Simpsons episode, The Bonfire of the Manatees, Homer foolishly falls for a betting scam. This alone is pretty horrible, but it now turns out that he's indebted to Fat Tony of the Springfield mob, so he decides to work for them in order to pay off his debts, because what could go wrong there? During You Only Move Twice, Homer ends up working for Hank Scorpio, a villain straight out of a Bond movie. Scorpio is trying to take over the world, and Homer is his smiling, oblivious helper. Although these dealings with villains are usually the result of stupidity rather than malice, does that really make it much better? Homer's endangered his family over and over again by associating with dangerous people, and of course, that's without even getting into the legal ramifications of getting caught up in organized crime. Spying. Oh boy, who remembers Google Glass? It was supposed to be the next big thing, but that was before all the pesky questions about privacy started cropping up. Like many other aspects of real life, this made its way onto The Simpsons in the episode Specs in the City. Mr. Burns decides to give all of his employees at the nuclear power plant a pair of augmented reality glasses, clearly intended to be a spoof on Google Glass. Now, Mr. Burns is shown over and over again to be a hilariously evil character, so it isn't surprising that he wants to spy on his employees. But Homer also uses the augmented reality glasses to do a little bit of spying of his own, on his trusting wife Marge, of course. Considering that she's married to Homer and should have probably run screaming into the night years ago, it's unsurprising that Marge seeks the help of a therapist from time to time. Homer stumbles into a situation where he can spy on his wife's therapy session, and he sits and watches. This is some truly depressing Don and Betty Draper stuff, and Homer sits silently while Marge shares her innermost thoughts to her therapist. It's a truly disgusting invasion of privacy, and it seems poor Marge isn't even safe during her own therapy sessions. Breaking point. More often than not, Marge gives Homer a pass when it comes to his truly reprehensible behavior, but every so often she reaches her limit. So what does it take to push someone as passive and tolerant as Marge to the breaking point? Let's take a look at the episode Homer Alone just for one example. Now, Homer is probably Marge's largest source of stress, but she does have others. She's responsible for caring for a baby and 2 young children, one of whom is almost constantly in trouble, and since Homer is such a lousy husband and father, Marge is more often than not on her own. During this episode, Marge has a tragic but sadly not surprising mental breakdown on the Springfield Memorial Bridge. After this incident, Marge is finally given some much-needed rest and relaxation, and all Homer has to do is take care of Maggie. But of course, he can't handle this, even closing his infant daughter's diaper with a staple gun. This man has 3 children and has never had to change a diaper before? To make matters worse, he actually loses his own baby at one point. Homer can't even handle a fraction of what Marge puts up with on a daily basis. While Marge comes back from her vacation relaxed, who can say how long it'll be until she breaks down again? Sounds like the origin story of a supervillain here. Best quality. We've spent a lot of time so far talking about what's wrong with Homer Simpson, but now let's take a moment to discuss what's great about him as a husband. Don't worry, this won't take long. The fact is that Marge has really and truly settled with Homer, since even his best qualities are pretty much the bare minimum requirements for most people. We've seen more than one episode which seems to imply Homer should get a pat on the back for maintaining his monogamous commitment to his wife. In addition to marrying someone else, Homer has also had inappropriate relationships with several other women. During Colonel Homer, he becomes the manager for singer Lurleen Lumpkin, a decision which makes Marge jealous, and it turns out she was right to be, because Lurleen ends up putting the moves on her man. Homer rejects her in the end, but it never should have gotten to that point. Things get even worse in The Last Temptation of Homer, when he hits it off with his attractive co-worker, Mindy Simmons. Oh, Mindy. While they don't physically hook up, these two engage in what many of us would term an emotional affair. They discuss their feelings for one another, spend time alone in a hotel room, and even share a kiss. Has the bar really been set so low that we're gonna pat this guy on the back for not physically cheating on his wife? Divorce. Hey, remember the time when Homer and Marge Simpson got a divorce? If not, don't worry, we'll remind you. In the episode of Milhouse Divided, we get to see yet another dysfunctional couple on The Simpsons, the Van Houtens. They're the parents of Milhouse Van Houten, and they can't stand being married to one another. Can I borrow Oh, feeling. Luann and Kirk Van Houten separate, and Homer tries to help Kirk transition to being single. However, the scene is pretty grim for Kirk, who encourages Homer to appreciate his wife before it's too late. While this is good advice, it's kind of sad that Homer has apparently never thought about this before. Despite his wife's mental breakdown and his almost affairs, should it really have taken the word of a sad middle-aged man who sleeps in a race car bed for Homer to realize he should probably appreciate his wife? But maybe it'll be better late than never, and after all, we would love to see Marge being treated a little bit better. After failing to woo her with a haircut, Homer gives her what all wives dream of on their wedding day, a divorce. He files divorce paperwork and then remarries her in a small celebration. We suppose his heart was probably in the right place, but filing divorce papers is generally something couples don't bounce back from. Those are just some of the reasons why Marge should divorce Homer already. Should they call it quits? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more Simpsons videos like this one. Woohoo! Thanks for watching.